Hi, I'm Hoda. Today I'm going to show you how to make a 7-spiced pulled lamb shepherd's pie in about an hour using my trusty pal, the Cook4me Plus, and the beautiful Ingenio range by Tefal. So this recipe would normally take about 10 hours. You want a slow cooked lamb, you want it falling off the bone so that you can pull it and it becomes amazing in this rich sauce. But with the Cook4me Plus, it's going to pressure cook it for about an hour, and during that time we're going to prep the rest of the ingredients. So let's start. We're going to turn on the machine. Now this machine, the Cook4me Plus, has a few functions, and what we're doing today is I'm setting it on the manual method and going to the classic cooking, and what I want to do is brown. So I want the browning function in order to brown the meat, because that's going to give us the caramelization that we need. It's extra flavor. You don't want to just be throwing meat in there with some spices and stock. You won't get the full depth of flavor that we're after. So I've got a leg of lamb. Now you can use shoulder. I just find it a little bit more fattier. If you have a good relationship with your butcher, don't be afraid to ask him to cut it into pieces. So I've got a couple of pieces there. So that way it browns nicely and fits in the Cook4me Plus. The Cook4me now has come up to temperature. We can start browning the meat, and what I'm going to do is add a couple of tablespoons of a good extra virgin olive oil, and this is a nice classic flavour just in there, and that helps with the caramelization. Now we're just going to drop that in, and you can hear that sizzle, and we're going to leave that there. Few minutes on each side, and what we're going to do is now get on to chopping our onions and getting everything ready so we can put it all in the one bowl. So what I've got here is 2 onions, and I want like a fairly fine dice on it, but do not be measuring a millimetre by millimetre. Onions are done. We need 2 cloves of garlic for this. Really, there's no rules to this, apart from the fact that it has to have a lot of flavour. So, all right, let's check on our meat here. You want that beautiful caramelization happening, because that's going to be flavour once it starts pressure cooking. So turn it onto its other side and let that go for a few minutes, and then we can start adding the rest of the ingredients. So our lamb is caramelized and it is smelling sensational at the moment. So we're going to now start adding the rest of the ingredients because we want to get this cooking. Meat can stay in there, so don't take the meat out, leave it in there, because the more caramelization it gets, the better. I like to do things on the go. So everything is going to be done, every component of this shepherd's pie is going to be done within the time that it takes for the filling to cook. So we've got that sauteing. We want to add about 2 bay leaves. I've got the dried kind, and if you're using fresh, maybe 1. So all of these I've mixed and made my bharat, the 7-spice mix, and this is a typical Middle Eastern 7-spice mix. Got a bit of ground black pepper, ground allspice, ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, ground coriander, ground cloves, and ground ginger. And what we're going to do is just add that straight in there as well. Tomato paste. So just to add a little bit of richness to that, it's 2 teaspoons roughly. If you're like me, these are my teaspoons. So maybe it's safe to say 2 teaspoons. So we've got 1 there, and that's the second one in there. Bit of a mix. So we're adding 2 tablespoons as well of Worcestershire sauce. And then the final thing is chicken stock. You can use beef stock or even vegetable stock. Really, whatever you have on hand is fine. And the final touch is, I guess it's what I would call my first sprinkling of salt for the dish, straight in there. Now, in keeping with the manual setting on the Cook4me Plus, I'm done with the browning function, so I want to stop that cooking, and I do want to go to pressure cooking. And what I'm going to set this at is about, I'm going to say about an hour. And that way, we want an immediate start. It prompts you to close the bolt and lock it. And now it's doing its thing, I can move on to every other element of this dish and have it ready by the time this beauty is ready. All right, so we're giving these potatoes, they've been peeled, and we're just gonna give them a rough chop just to cook a bit quicker. So the water's boiling now. I'm just gonna remove the handle to make life a bit easier so I don't knock it over. And then try and gently, without burning myself, drop the potatoes in. That's gonna take about, I'm gonna say a good 5 minutes or so. You can either make your own short crust pastry, but if you've got no time and you're trying to get this done in an hour or thereabouts, you can buy it from the freezer section at your local supermarket. We'll be covering the base, but also the sides, and that second piece is going to be cut into strips, and we're going to try and be a bit neat with it and get it on the side. These potatoes are very nice and soft. They're done. We can move on and strain them. Don't forget your handle. Lift. Now what you want to do is you want to strain these potatoes and then keep them in the colander for a good few minutes, not only to drain out all the water, but what happens is the steam will actually also like dry them up at the same time. So we want to leave them for a few minutes in there. So the potatoes have been in the colander for a couple of minutes now. We're going to go back to the pan and we're going to get the masher and just start to mash them in there. This also saves, dishes. We're gonna add about 50 grams roughly of butter. Plus we've got the milk. We've got about half a cup roughly of milk. That's in there. Just keep mashing them all together, and you can turn your stove back on and just put it on low heat. Now, to get a nice smooth mash, you want to pass it through a sieve. I'm actually going to just give it a little bit of a whiz with the masher, but I do want it to be cold. And the reason why you want it to cool down is because if you use like a stick blender or something like that to puree, it will go all gluggy and gluey, and you don't really want that. You want a nice fluffy mash. So our lamb is done and it is looking beautiful, smelling absolutely delicious as well. We're just gonna get the plate here and I'm gonna try and gracefully and carefully lift it out of the pot. Just drain off that excess. Look at that beautiful color. While I'm pulling this lamb, I'm going to add the carrots in now. Okay, now we can go back to manual setting and we're pressure cooking, and we just want the carrots to be cooked. So I'm going to put it on for 2 minutes and close that lid. And this is the moment of truth, whether we see if our lamb has been nicely cooked like this. Yum. So it's just falling off there. Just flake it, because don't forget, this is going in the pie. You want to be able to, with every spoonful, get a bit of pastry, bit of the filling and a bit of the potato. The carrots have just finished. Just gonna toss those bay leaves out. That's now on browning, so that's coming up to the boil/simmer. So we've got about 3 tablespoons of corn flour in here, and you always mix it with cold water. If you mix it with hot water, you're gonna get little lumps of corn flour in your gravy. You don't really want that happening for this. I'm gonna say roughly about 100 to 150 mils, and then just give it a good mix. It's all gotta dissolve, because if it doesn't dissolve, again, you're gonna have little bits of corn flour going through that you can't actually get rid of. Put that down, grab our whisk, and while we're whisking, slightly vigorously, just in a steady stream, put your corn flour slurry in. While you're whisking, give it a taste for seasoning, because at this point, you can taste for seasoning and to make sure that all the flavors are right and are there. I'm just going to get it onto the simmering now. So So that's just to cook off the corn flour. It's nearly there. We've got our lamb. It's been pulled, and try and be a little bit gentle with that. Just drop the lamb in. We're going to turn this off now. Stop it completely. And the beauty of this machine, so we've made pretty much everything in the one bowl, is that the handles are always cool to the touch. So you can take that out, and now our pie is ready to be filled. We're going to put our filling in. Down there, just next to it. Look at that. That meat, the carrots, all that flavour, delicious. Don't fill it all the way to the top, and the reason for that is when you pipe on, and I am piping on the mash, it's going to add some weight to that filling. So you don't want it to come over the sides, you just want it all to be, you want the potato to pretty much be the one that's sitting flush on the top. Potato I've put in a piping bag, and the reason for that, it makes it so much easier to just pipe it in sort of like a spiral shape. We've got that final little bit in the middle. But you can spread it a bit with a spatula, that's absolutely fine. So what you want to do now is bake it in the oven at 180 degrees. It'll probably take about, I'd say about 30 minutes. So keep it in. When it's nice and golden, it means it's ready. It's time to take out the pie from the oven. Yum, look at that. Beautiful golden brown. That potato has slightly, and the pastry just puffed a bit. Beautiful, I can't wait to dig in. And just for, you know, the look and a little bit of the taste, just rip off a few parsley leaves, tear them in your hands, and just scatter them everywhere. And there you have it, a nice, quick and easy 7-spiced pulled lamb shepherd's pie in collectively about an hour and a half, something that would have taken you about 10 to 12 hours to do in a fraction of the time.